Okay, thank you. Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar. So this is the first webinar we are hosting, and it's part of our virtual origin trip, because of course this year we won't be able to host you in real life. So we've decided to move our origin trip to the virtual world. So thanks for joining us. Today's webinar will be about sustainability, and we'll focus on our sustainability report that we very proudly launched late last year. So we will talk a little bit about that and then answer some questions about it. So if you haven't read the sustainability report that we launched, I would highly recommend you to do this, because it will tell you a little bit more about goes more into depth about the details. And you can actually find it in the chat on the right as a PDF. And it's also for download on the website. So if you haven't looked at the virtual origin trip page on the website yet, we will post a link in the chat. And there you will be able to find the dates for the next webinars, which we will be hosting every other Thursday. So the next one will be on the 18th of February. But you can find the dates, as I said, on www.primavera.coffee/VOT, virtual origin trip. And also you will find harvest updates and other interesting things. So please have a look at that. We're very proud to organize this webinar for you. First, I will introduce my wonderful colleagues. So of course, our founder, Nadine Rush. Hello. Hey.
Hi.
Nadine is based in Guatemala at the moment, so we will talk about that a little bit later. Nadine.
Hi.
And then my wonderful colleague in the US, Hillary Rodriguez. Hi.
Hey. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hillary, based here in California for Primavera.
And then my other colleague, last but not least, Stijn Braas.
Hey, I'm Stijn. I'm based here in Amsterdam. I'm about 500 meters away from Kim. And I work as a customer relationship manager here in Europe.
Yeah, and as Stijn said, I'm also based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, the newest team member. So Kim Staalman, my name is. So happy to see you all. Okay, so we will start with me asking questions to my colleagues. And then after we finish that, there will be time for a Q&A. So if you find that you have any questions about anything, you can either type the question in the chat box on the right, and we will address them when the Q&A starts, or you will be able to unmute during the Q&A. So, and please, we are also recording this session so that people who aren't able to join us right now will be able to watch it back later. Okay. So maybe Stijn can answer the first question. So why is sustainability important to Primavera? Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Sure. Yeah, I think it would seem like it speaks for itself why it would be important to us, but actually it's kind of interesting to think about really why does sustainability matter for us. And I think sustainability is important to us as a company because we are really dependent on the quality of our coffees. And to make sure we have consistent and high quality coffee production, we have to think about sustainability and how we can make this sustainable. Because basically our success stands or falls with having reliable quality year over year. So the economic viability of Primavera as a coffee trader largely depends on us working on a sustainable supply chain. And Primavera was originally founded 9 years ago to have a more equitable and economically sustainable coffee trade within this industry. We want to have a sustainable coffee business because it's the right thing to do, but not only that, we also believe that Our success as a company depends on our ability and willingness to support everyone along the value chain, and together we will thrive.
Thanks, Stijn. That's clear. So actually, so of course we work with coffee. Can you talk a little bit about what sustainable coffee production means?
Right, so, we took sustainability very broad. So sustainable coffee production for us means that the whole chain of production is future-proof. So a real sustainable value chain is one that supports farmers, it supports the ecosystems that we work in, and it supports the communities in all the regions where we work. So in short, sustainability means that we'll get to enjoy our coffees for the rest of our lives. We see in our industry many times that many have a very narrow idea about what sustainability really means. For example, like being a sustainable farmer means that you can take care of the environment, and we as an exporter have to help tackle climate change to make coffee future-proof. But we see that there are other major issues in the coffee production industry that need to be addressed, so that coffee will be here for the years to come.
Yeah, we don't want coffee to go anywhere. So why did we choose to write the report, the sustainability report? And also, I'm curious about this particular structure, because economic, environmental, and social.
Sure. Yeah, there are a couple of reasons why we decided to write this report. First one is to get more insight into the sustainability challenges in Guatemala. It's very easy while we're working as a company in Guatemala to oversee these challenges if you're living in it. Things that you may think of as normal might not always be very sustainable. So we set ourselves an assignment to really check the status of Guatemala as a coffee producing country and what are the threats to it. The second reason why we chose to write it is that we can improve on what we're already doing. So sometimes doing things differently because we just think it's the right thing to do. And other times we didn't think of something which might be very easy. So we used our sustainability report to check where there is room for improvement. And the third reason is to share this information with our customers in order to be more transparent. So for us, sustainability and transparency are two sides of the same coin. And to be more sustainable, you need to be accountable, and transparency is one important side of that. Transparency is especially important in economic sustainability. So everyone in the supply chain can understand what a economic transaction within the trade, how it works. So the idea of the three areas of sustainability are like the legs of a three-legged stool. So if you take one away, the stool can no longer stand. We've identified these three areas as economic sustainability, social sustainability, and environmental sustainability. And to have a real sustainable coffee industry requires that all these three legs are addressed in our work. Let me tell you a little bit about these three areas. Economic sustainability refers to each participant in the value chain earning a fair income. So like I said, transparency is a huge piece of economic sustainability, because without transparent data sharing, we can't honestly evaluate the fairness and the sustainability of economic transactions in the value chain. So that's why we've emphasized sharing price information in our economic section, in addition to exploring some other considerations for producers who work with us. The second area is the environmental sustainability, and that's needed because short-term economic gains can basically be eradicated by long-term destruction of the environment. And coffee growing is usually in a very fragile ecosystem, and like preserving this is really key to ensuring the future of our industry. So we looked at various environmental concerns, including global climate change and efforts to maintain clean water, air, and land. And the final area is social sustainability. This means ensuring that communities and families are able to share in the profits of coffee without leaving out certain populations. And this means working with marginalized groups intentionally in order to make it easy for them to participate in specialty coffee. So these are, for example, youth, women, poor and indigenous communities, and those are the focus for us in this section.
Thanks, Stijn. Many challenges in the coffee industry, but full steam ahead. Okay, Hilary, I'm gonna focus on you now. So reading the sustainability report, it's clear that we make use of FOB prices, free on board, instead of farm gate prices. Can you explain a little bit about that, why we chose that?
Definitely, yes. So this is a really great question, and this is something that I think is really interesting. So I think to begin, first of all, let's define farm gate and FOB prices so that we're all on the same page. So farm gate prices are, of course, the price that the farmer actually receives for their product. So this is obviously very important to us because our relationships with our producers are super important to us. And some things to know about farm gate price, of course, is that it's paid in the local currency. So in this case, Guatemalan quetzales is the local currency. And it's not always the same. So sometimes producers are delivering cherry to us. Sometimes our producers are delivering parchment coffee to us. So depending on what work the producer has done to their product, they're going to get kind of a different farm gate price depending on the value of the product that they have sold to us. And so to contrast that a little bit, FOB prices are also really useful. So free on board prices reflect the cost of the coffee. So everything that's happened to the coffee up to the port of departure in Guatemala. So that means that FOB prices reflect things that farm gate prices don't, like processing, dry processing, of course, and transport within the country of Guatemala. So after some really interesting discussions with the team, we decided to use FOB prices in this report for two kind of interrelated reasons. The first being that farm gate prices are just a little complicated for quick information sharing like we wanted to do in this report. So for example, a farm gate price, not only is it in Guatemalan quetzales, which I don't use in my sort of day-to-day transactions, and you might not either. And it can also be a price per kilo, a price per pound, or a price per quintal of cherry, depending on which country in the world you're in. And so you might have to do some currency sort of conversions and some unit of measure conversions. And then, of course, you might have to convert cherry to exportable green coffee or parchment to exportable green coffee. So for an international discussion about coffee prices, like the discussion we were trying to start with our sustainability report, we thought it would be really useful to use FOB prices because FOB prices are comparing exportable green coffee as the sort of product that we're pricing. And of course, green coffee uses US dollars per pound or per kilo, depending on where you are. So it's just a little bit of an easier way to communicate information from person to person when we're talking about the global stage. And then the second kind of connected reason is that having this comparison, sort of green exportable coffee in US dollars, is way better for apples to apples comparison, because one of the goals of the report was to compare ourselves with the wider coffee industry and kind of gauge how we were doing in the sort of broader world of coffee. And so you know, one thing that we did in the report that you can see in the economic section is that we compared our prices to the commodity market prices and the fair trade price of coffee. And so if you're working with farm gate price, that comparison is just not really possible because those sort of fair trade and commodity prices are measured in FOB, US dollars per pound or kilo of exportable green coffee. And of course, if you're thinking about all of the coffee producing countries of the world, farm gate prices in Guatemala are really hard to compare to like a farm gate price in Kenya or Ethiopia, because it's a different currency, it's a different cost of living. The cost of putting coffee on a truck and moving it around is going to be completely different. So using FOB instead of farm gate was a way that we found to kind of sort of take a number that everyone can understand, that kind of gives us an apples to apples comparison to work with, instead of trying to compare with these things that are really difficult to compare to. And then, also farm gate price, because it doesn't take into account these really important costs of transport within Guatemala, milling, financing. Like, we thought these were really important because they're part of the value of the product. And so as an exporter and importer, we're exporting, obviously, export grade green coffee. And so it kind of made sense to us, if we're sharing with our clients this information, that we would use FOB price to kind of reflect the quality of the product and the value of the product. So lots of reasons, but I think bottom line is both are really important to us, and both definitely have their place in our discussions of sustainability.
Thanks, Hilary. Also, something that is often spoken about is the cost of production for growers. In writing our sustainability report, did we include an analysis on the cost of production for growers? Or can you talk a little bit about that, maybe?
Definitely. Yeah. Another super important issue in coffee, I think. And we all know why, because in terms of economic sustainability, if a farmer can't earn back his or her cost of production, the sort of short, medium, and long-term sustainability of their farm is in jeopardy. And so in terms of trying to be an ethical buyer of coffee and a partner to our producers, this is really, really important for us to think about. And so one thing that we've done that we're really proud of is that we've created an easy to use form, so paper and pencil, for producers to start keeping track of their expenses on the farm, because small producers, we found, often don't do this. And so part of it is kind of creating this culture and making the tools accessible so that they can do it if they choose to start tracking their expenses in this way. So it has been a challenge. Sort of changing this culture and getting people to pick up a new habit can be challenging, but the producers that have chosen to utilize this tool, I think, have really gained a lot of knowledge and sort of a new way to think about what their coffee costs and where their money is going, or that sort of dynamic is really important. So, the thing that I think we should keep in mind, though, is that this is an estimated cost of production. So there are a lot of variables, sort of from producer to producer and from year to year in terms of cost of production. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting when we were sort of having this discussion with the team was how sort of unexpectedly complex it can be to calculate the cost of production of a coffee. So it seems like a simple concept, but it is a little more nuanced than I think we appreciate always. So as an example, there might be a producer who decides to invest in a new depulper for their home wet mill. And so, obviously, if they did that this year in 2021, their 2021 cost of production is going to be way higher than their 2020 cost of production because they invested in this big piece of equipment. So if you ask a producer, what's your cost of production this year, you'll get this like huge number that maybe doesn't add up, but then the next year it'll be kind of more back to normal. So do you take the cost and kind of distribute it throughout the years? You don't know how long the machine's going to last. But then there's also this interesting issue of depreciation. So we know when we buy a machine, it depreciates over time. And, you might need to do repairs on it over time. And so taking into part things like machine depreciation can be an interesting issue. And maybe if we have an Excel sheet on our computer, we could do it without too much trouble. But kind of working this concept into a pen and paper system can be a lot more challenging. So there's a lot of complexities that we have with cost of production. And then, of course, there's the matter of labor costs. So a lot of the labor on a farm is performed by the family. So if you've got a producer and her husband who are working on their farm, they're not typically keeping a sheet of their hours. They might go spend a couple hours a week on the farm during the off season, more hours during the harvest season. And they would say, oh, well, that's our labor, it's free, but it's definitely not free, of course, because they're working really hard and they're spending their time doing this. And so there's a lot of sort of this family labor, unpaid labor on the farm, or like unpaid by the hour, by the day. And so there's definitely some complexities of cost of production, I think, that are not always taken into account. But these are things that we're thinking about. And so the long-term goal that we have is to create a sort of basic system of accounting that's accessible to all the producers, to help them better understand their costs of production, where they can improve and how, and to have a better understanding of sort of what price they need, and maybe help them sort of pinpoint which buyer they want to work with so that they can do the best for themselves. And obviously, then our hope is that this will improve sustainability on a family level and a community level. And then sort of as we scale up, make the whole coffee industry a little bit more sustainable as well.
Thanks, Hilary. So what also is mentioned in the sustainability report is that the producers we work with, that they receive education and trainings. Can you go into a little bit more detail about what those entail, please?
Of course. Yes. So our agronomy team out in Huehuetenango, it's a 2-person team. We're very, very proud of their work. And one of the things I think that really sets us apart as a company is the fact that we have this great team, and also that they're working year round. So a lot of agricultural workers, including specialists like these guys, don't always have a job year round. And so the idea is we have them there all the time. They're from the community. And so they're really working with the farmers during these key periods of harvest and post-harvest, but also year round during the months where farmers are sort of doing this maintenance and upkeep of their farms that really helps quality and yields in the long run. So definitely in terms of economic sustainability, we know that our producers using this resource of the agronomy team are able to really take advantage of their advice and their knowledge, especially in terms of post-harvest processing at this time of year, and use that to get a higher price, to produce higher quality coffee and receive a higher price for their product, which is really great. But not only that, the team also works a lot with environmental goals. So they'll do a farm visit, offer sort of advice on how to manage their wastewater, or how to kind of create a really effective organic composting program for their farm that they can use to sort of boost their yields in a sustainable way. So one of the things that I really enjoyed in putting together the report was taking a look at what workshops the team was putting on for the producers. It was really great. It was cost of production, pest reduction and farm maintenance, environmental waste management, like wastewater management. And then they did cup quality and cupping workshops and post-harvest processing workshops. And I thought the cupping was really neat because I think a lot of producers never see a cupping or never sort of get to understand what sensory analysis in coffee is. So there's a lot of really neat skills and information sharing that's happening during our workshops, which we're really excited about. But definitely, I think the other thing that sets us apart is that we are not only kind of having these trainings and making them accessible to everyone, but we're really kind of going out and encouraging people to attend, including maybe the people that don't always get to attend or don't always get encouraged to attend. So for example, we've really done a lot in terms of bringing women into our workshops, and young people as well. And so a lot of people maybe that don't feel welcomed always at a typical workshop, they kind of are people that we're really actively seeking out for their participation. And these are things that have really kind of coincided with our social sustainability mission as well. So it's really cool. Like over the 7 to 8 years, especially, we've seen a lot of changes, a lot of small changes, things like in processing. We've seen kind of small incremental changes, like a second soak. A lot of producers, after washing their coffee, will soak it a second time. They've taken our agronomist advice in terms of drying on the patio. So sometimes you'll see producers with an inexpensive retractable shade mesh cloth over their drying patio, which kind of helps slow down drying on a really sunny day. So these are sort of very methodical and intentional small changes that are accessible to small producers, but they've really done a lot to help boost quality in the region. And so we're really proud of the work that they've done. And if you're interested, definitely stay tuned also for future webinars, because we work with these guys a lot, and their work is something that we're really excited to share more about in the future.
Great, thank you, Hillary. That's awesome. So I just like to remind everyone that we do have the sustainability report, and it's really great. We're very proud of it. And I posted another file in the chat, so please download it and read it at your leisure. Okay, question for Nadine. So since you're in Guatemala, you're probably the best person to answer this question. But how do you think that COVID-19 impacted the sustainability of coffee production in Guatemala?
Thank you. Obviously, we can't go without having the COVID-19 question being asked, and it has impacted the country and the producers tremendously. I think more so in the economic category of the sustainability report that we've been discussing. I'm not sure if how familiar everyone is with the situation in Guatemala, but basically our government imposed a 7-month restriction on movement across different departments and state in Guatemala. And we had a very, very tough lockdown and curfew for 7 months, where people could not, they had to be home from 6 p.m. to 5 a.m. And all these measures were in order, obviously, to contain the virus. But it made it very difficult for the producers and their workers to be able to address their day-to-day routine work at the farm. So for example, a lot of farmers found it very difficult to find labor, and if labor was available, it was much more expensive than it usually was, because a lot of the producers and workers were very frightened by this pandemic and this mysterious virus that was behind it. So I think that made the first couple of months right after the harvest very difficult for a lot of producers, when it's a very key time period in the production of coffee, because after you pick everything, you have to prune and fertilize, which are key aspects or key processes in the quality of the future crop. So that was one of the main impacts it had. Obviously, other costs such as fertilizer and even food and basic consumer goods were more expensive because it was difficult to transport them. So in that sense, I think it's made the economic sustainability of these producers a little bit harder this year. Hopefully, families have come together and have helped themselves and helped others in their communities, making the social sustainability a little bit better. But as the harvest 2021 approaches, we have helped a lot of the producers and their workers understand the social distancing measures that need to be in place. And we've had really, really good weather, so we hope that this new harvest will help them regain the economic stability that they had. along with doing some donations of basic foods. Thank you to all of our donors and roasting partners that participated in that. We have also printed out posters with all the information, and have given masks to our producers and their workforce in order to keep everyone safe this coming harvest. But we are thankful that coffee is an outdoor activity, and we have been able to continue with the harvest as is for this coming year.
Thank you. Yeah, that's clear. Challenging, but workable. So at the end of the report, there is a list of sustainability goals focusing on each different area of sustainability. What Stijn spoke about earlier, the 3 legs of the stool. Can you share a little bit maybe about future plans on with regards to our sustainability goals and new ideas for the future?
Sure. So with regards to the 3 main sustainability goals that we have for the future, the first one being economic sustainability, the idea is always to keep improving quality and for producers to be able to access, as Hilary was discussing, our workshops and our agronomy and post-harvesting information, and continuously improve their coffee quality, and therefore be able to have a higher potential for earning better prices for their coffee. That's going to be an ongoing goal for us for forever, I think, because it is the essence of the work that we do. And then in the environmental sustainability section, we saw that we could improve heavily on the wastewater management by all these small producers. I think that water scarcity has become a more challenging situation everywhere in the world, but certainly in some coffee growing communities. So going forward, we want to help a lot of the small producers have a more sustainable wastewater treatment, so that they can manage their honeyed waters. There's different ways of doing them, but there's a particular interesting, very artisanal sort of water treatment tank where the waters evaporate or they filter through to the soils, but leaves the honeys out, so that the water that is going and filtrating back into the soils is not as acidic and damaging to their immediate environment. And this is something that can be done at a fairly low cost. But it has to do more with knowledge and information sharing. So that's one of our goals for as soon as the harvest sort of finishes, we are going to set a target to get all of our producers on board to take care of their water resources more seriously. And then in the social aspect of the sustainability, I was very happy to see that we are buying more and more coffees from female producers, but I would like to actively seek out more of these female producers, because we've seen the beneficial impacts that having female coffee growers and producers has on communities and their children. Growing up with strong female leadership can benefit the family power and economic dynamics in a very positive way. So that's sort of our goal for the coming years in the social sustainability aspect.
Thanks, Nadine. Okay, one final question before we move on to the Q&A. So, can you recollect one thing from the sustainability report that surprised you to see?
Yeah, so for me, I'll share mine, and then everyone can share theirs. But for me, leading this company or founding it and being very involved in it for the past 9 years, I've paid careful attention to every level and every detail of the business, but of course there's a lot of things that might escape. And what I found super interesting in doing the report is that we went from having 0 coffee producers in year 1 to having 25% of our producers being female producers this year. So that's something that really surprised me and made me quite happy that we have been so welcoming and open to everyone in the value chain, and it's something that we want to keep pushing forward. And then the other great thing that both surprised me and encourages us to keep going forward is, how these producers had really great quality coffee, but they lacked a lot of knowledge about, production and processing and what really happens in all of that. It was more, word of mouth or passed down from generation to generation. But a lot of the producers have become more and more interested in what happens in both in the field from the agronomy side, but also in the harvesting and the fermentation and the drying and all of that. And they've become very interested in tasting their coffee and seeing what sort of quality they have. And that has been, for me, very surprising and very rewarding.
Awesome. Should I hop in?
Yeah, please.
So cool. So one thing that I was really excited about when we were collecting stories and quotations from our producers to add to the report, something that kept coming up that was really exciting to me was that a lot of the producers mentioned how much they value having a warehouse in their community. In San Antonio, Vista is sort of the main hub of coffee trading in this area. And then, of course, there's some small towns outside of San Antonio, Vista. And, you get into a truck in San Antonio and you can drive. It's a pretty good long way to drive to the main city in Huehuetenango, which is also called Huehuetenango. And so, before, if a producer wanted to sell their coffee, they would have to, put their coffee in a truck, usually hire a truck and drive all the way to Huehuetenango and then sell their coffee to someone in the city, someone usually that they didn't know. And so, they kept mentioning that they really value having a warehouse in their community. And part of that they were saying was that it's an extra cost, of course, to put coffee in a truck, hire a truck and move it to another place. And also in terms of, going to the city that they don't normally go to, there's always a risk of crime or, theft or something. And then they're selling coffee to someone they don't know. They don't necessarily trust them. They're not sure when they're going to get paid. So it had an element of risk. And the producers that sell coffee to us at our warehouse in San Antonio find it very valuable, not only to have an easier, quicker way to get coffee from their mill to their to the person who's going to buy the coffee, which is us, but they also like having people they know in the warehouse that they can ask questions to, that they can talk to. They can trust that they're going to get paid on time. They can trust that, if there's an issue, they can just go to the warehouse and ask a question. And I found that really, really interesting because I think it kind of signifies more of an equal relationship between the producer and the exporter. And maybe in a way more equal way than they were trading coffee before. So that was something that really struck me during the collection process of information for the report.
That's me last. What surprised me about the reports mostly is about, I had a very strong idea about a typical coffee producer of like very old people, usually couples. I always thought that coffee production in a way is a little bit like a dying occupation because it involves a lot of manual labor. It's very risky. It's not always very profitable, especially with the market prices going on. But what really struck me about working on the report is that over 40% of our producers are under 40 years old. And it's amazing to see that we can make a difference by supporting local organizations that support young farmers. Guatemala has big issues with migration. Migration is usually done by younger people, but we can really invest in these communities, and we can make a difference, and we can encourage a younger generation to take over the reins of their parents or even grandparents and reinvent themselves to be specialty producers. And that will have such an impact for decades to come. So I'm really proud of that.
Great, thank you. Those are some really wonderful observations from the report. So we will be moving on to the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please type your message in the chat box. Right now we have a question from Estri from Flores. Selamat datang, Estri. So maybe Nadine would like to answer Estri's question. Estri is asking, how do we overcome if the cost production at the farm is, if the cost of production is higher than the market price is offering for the producer's coffee?
Yeah, thank you for your question. And I think this is the challenging question that every coffee grower sort of faces. Unfortunately, we live in a world where coffee prices are marked by a commodity price that is typically not very relatable to supply and demand. There's a lot of other factors that are involved in the increase and decrease in prices of the commodities, and therefore what the importer is willing to pay for certain coffees. So I think as we've done in our company, when we first started, our initial goal was to have a more equitable trade, and therefore the only way we could ask our buyers to buy the coffee was to show them higher quality. So we saw a direct relationship between higher quality and higher prices. So one of the things that I would recommend, if your cost of production is higher than market price or what the importer is willing to pay, is to probably try and increase the quality of the coffee, as best as possible to find alternative markets that are willing to pay for that quality. Of course, we understand that there's a market for every coffee, and there's certainly different prices within those markets. So if you believe that the coffee is of good quality and it's been well processed, it would be good to try and find a different market for your coffee. Another strategy that we also share with our producers, of course, all of these suggestions are what we've implemented here in Guatemala. They might work in other countries, they might not. But the other interesting thing is to look at certifications to receive premiums. So you could become part of either Rainforest Alliance or Fair Trade in order to receive a premium. We see in the report that even the prices that people receive for those coffees are still lower than some of the higher quality coffee prices, but at the same time they're higher than market price. So that's another strategy. So you have higher quality, finding different markets, and then you have certifications. Along with that, if you're an individual producer, you can become a member of an organization or a cooperative that will help you reach, hopefully help you reach better coffee markets in order to sell your coffee at a higher price. But it's the hardest question out there, and the goal for everyone to achieve.
Okay, thanks, Nadine. So if anyone still has a question, please raise your hand. Otherwise, I think we might wrap it up. So I will remind you that we are recording this webinar and we will post it on the virtual origin trip page of our website. Please have a look there and share it with your friends and colleagues and anyone who might be interested. I hope to see you at our next webinar, which will be on Thursday, the 18th of February. It will be about the harvest in Guatemala that is going on at the moment. We'll have a good update for you. So I guess that's it. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to all my wonderful colleagues, and hope to
Perfect.
see you on the 18th.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks.